Okay, hi Craig, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. This is the first time I've ever actually been interviewed to go up on YouTube by somebody else.
And
here you
you're from
go.
South Australia. So Craig Hendry lives like a normal bloke. And
Totally normal bloke.
and
Yeah, absolutely.
you have family, you have normal life. I met your
Yeah.
beautiful wife, and
Yeah,
you came to Melbourne and we saw each other. It was the best. We have to do it again soon.
it was a moment that passed very quickly,
Yes.
and it was very enjoyable though.
In a moment, as it arose, it just went down.
Absolutely.
It was really great fun.
But
Anyway,
I like the reference to normality,
yeah.
in that it is perfectly normal. Everything is perfectly normal. To see things the way things are seen.
Yeah.
It's about being a normal individual, doing normal stuff, and even being able to say words without being stuck on what words are being spoken. And that sometimes we can get caught up with, getting trapped on the words that we say. Like I just said, normal individual then. But I don't place any significance on that.
Yes.
Because an individual, when you break the word down, I think I might have heard someone else say this, an individual, when you break those two words up, you have an indivisible duality.
Wow.
Meaning a complete and total merging of formlessness with form. Shiva with Shakti, so to speak. True individuality, true indivisible. The formlessness with the form merged, and just acting and walking from that perspective, and being totally normal. And I can remember when some of this stuff started first coming to the surface for me.
Yeah.
I thought, no shit, does this mean I'm going to have to go and sit in a temple somewhere dressed in orange, staring at a wall?
Mr. Gadata would kick you out without
because that's the first place you go. What does this mean? And it turns out it didn't have to go that way at all. It was completely ordinary.
Lucky you.
It just becomes more and more ordinary. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some
so it
people
becomes more ordinary as you go, but you didn't see anyone in particular. Have you seen teachers, or how, like nothing happened, as like we know that, but how did recognition of what you are, like you were, what you are, happened?
Well, for me, it's kind of been there as long as I can remember. I think I said to you the other night, I can recall the time that I first realized I was alive, as in having recognition of being a living entity. And it was when I was on a beach. I might even have been in South Australia, and I was young, either 7 or 8 years old, and I had this. My mother was on the beach with me, and I said to her, "Hey, Mum, what's this beating? What's this sensation that I'm feeling inside my chest?" And she said, "Oh, that's your heart. It's beating, and if that's what keeps you alive. If it stops, then you'll be in trouble." And I remember that just dawning on me what that actually meant, that I was sort of inside this thing at that time, reliant on this pumping some blood around. And it was just, I guess, just my perspective at the time of seeing that was just a recognition right there and then that there was this happening, and there was me looking at this happening.
Yeah.
But there was this, like almost like a sense of dependency upon this thing continuing.
Yeah.
But knowing that it wasn't actually me, it was something I was looking at from that perspective. And as I grew up in life, I began to sort of, some people would call it searching. I don't know if I would call it searching. I would call it exploring.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You sort of explore things. You look around. So I went down many avenues, looking for different experiences. I got into, I did seances, also stuff like that. I got involved in religion. I got involved in politics. I traveled the world. I went and worked in India for about 10 years. I worked in New Guinea for a while. I was in the military for an amount of time. So I was doing lots of different sort of activities.
Mm.
And with each activity that came along, I kind of went as far as I could go in that activity before another dimension of thought opened to me. Then I followed that path and went down there. So it was just for me, it was just an unfolding, revelatory sort of experience that you go along where things are just kind of opening up to you. And when you reach a certain point, you might turn around and look back, and then it all kind of just comes together and makes sense. You sort of, okay, well, that's why that happened, or that's why that happened. Mm. And you can see along the way, everything has been perfect. There's never been any sort of mistakes.
Yeah.
We can look at things and attribute mistakes to it, like yes. things people might have done or said things to us that were hurtful.
Yes.
But we can look at that from a frame of reference of a victim, or you can look at that from a frame of reference of, gee, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't be here as it is now.
Exactly.
And if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be the person I am now. So it all kind of works in together until where I am at the moment is just the recognition that all there is what you are.
Yes.
And that we apparently look out through these eyes and we see something.
Yeah.
And then we can either see it as being what we are, or we can see it as being something that's separate to us.
Yeah. You know when you said how you saw that heartbeat, how you noticed the heartbeat, and it's interesting. Yeah. And when we connect it to the mind, we think, if I think, then I'm alive when I think only. But really, what if you went to bed at night, and you had to think how to beat your heart? If you were beating the heart, would you dare like falling asleep? And how would beating happen if you had to think to beat your heart?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was something I was kind of seeing today, and I wrote it up on Instagram, where I was talking about that point before you breathe, an in-breath.
Yes.
And that point at the end of exhaling a breath.
Yeah.
There's a momentary, like a pause before it begins coming in again.
Yes.
So the tide goes out, and then it stops, and then it starts coming back in again, and then it stops, and it goes out again. There's this to-ing and fro-ing going on. Yes. And at the end of each of these points, there's just this pregnant potentiality just sitting there. And when you focus in on that, there's this realization that that's the ground of all being, if you like, the source of what we see here as being what we are. And I know, some people might criticize the notion of focusing in on your breath, and that sort of stuff. Say, well, who needs to teach you how to breathe? Well, breathing, nobody gets taught how to breathe. Breathing is something that we do automatically. What this is talking about is looking at that still point at the end of each inhale and exhale, and recognizing that that's that point there is basically an incredible sort of a breathless place where there's an immense sort of joy and connection itself to be discovered. It's kind of like focusing on the gap between thoughts.
Yes,
it's a similar sort of thing, and it's like the gap between the exhale and the inhale. There's just this stillness that's there, but it's not a stillness which is nothingness. It's a stillness which is full of effervescent, sort of vibrant aliveness. That's just potentiality. Just waiting for everything to sort of happen.
It's quite rich in a way. It's quite rich. I'd say, like, really tasty.
Yeah.
Almost
Absolutely.
tasty. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was driving down the road in my car as I was doing this.
Yes.
And I almost had to pull over and stop.
Yeah.
To give it due, the due sort of honor of the moment, I guess. So what I find happening for me is as you have the relationship with yourself and dive down deep into yourself.
You said something beautiful. I have to, because you just mentioned that, because I'm going to forget if I don't ask now. You said something about drinking from your own
drinking
well.
From your own well.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. Well, the idea or the pointer towards drinking from your own well is the recognition that there are no other wells to drink from. You might think there are other wells to drink from, or there are other people out there that can give you something. But in reality, there are no other people out there that can give you anything. And that if you think someone is giving you something, you're not actually drinking from your own well. You're drinking from an apparent other's well, which is part of the reinforcement of the illusion of separation.
So really separate.
Because all there is.
My well is richer than yours.
Yeah, exactly. Because all there is you drinking of yourself. Feeding upon yourself, nurturing yourself, illuminating yourself, always. And it might appear as though there are other people in this. And you can go along with that if you want, or you can look at it and see that really, in reality, there is only you. Yeah. Drinking from yourself, speaking to yourself. You might use other forms to do that, but it's always just you doing it. There is no sort of dichotomy of guru and student or anything like that, leader and follower. That's the appearance that goes on, but the reality is it's all just you. There is nothing that you can claim not to be, because everything that appears is what you are. And when you're coming at it, like I remember Nisargadatta, from what I read of him, he said something about, and I know one of his most famous books is I Am That, right? And one of these other books I had to look at, might have been, I don't know what it was called, The Ultimate Medicine or something like that, but someone quoted from that book, and he said to them, no, don't, that was for them. What I'm saying now probably should have been said then, but it's being said now. What I'm saying now is what you need to be listening to, not that, this.
It's gone.
Right? And what he was talking to is that sometimes we can get frozen in time to a particular revelation that might have been relevant at a particular moment of time, but now we've moved on to something else, and it's this over here. But one thing he seemed to say at the time was that there's this process you go through of neti, of basically saying that you're nothing that appears. You sort of negate. You negate everything as a means of discovering yourself. Yeah. And so you go through, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. And by default, you end up realizing that you're nothing that's perceptible. You're nothing that's conceivable. You transcend all appearances and all that sort of stuff. Right? You go to this place of emptiness and voidness, and I'm nothing that appears. And then what happens is it kind of inverts on itself like a black hole. There's a black hole that goes in and then it explodes outwards, where you suddenly realize that you're everything. you can, and when you're in that perspective of recognizing you're everything that appears, you can no longer claim to be not what appears, but you're not looking at it from the perspective of if I say I'm this, I'm stuck to it. It becomes an identity.
Yeah.
Like if I identify as being a thought, then I am a thought, and you're sort of stuck on that. So you gotta say, no, I'm not the thoughts that appear. I'm not the emotions that appear. I'm not the body that's here. And it's all a way of, like a spider learning to spin a web where it can actually spin the web and not get caught in its own web. It can, a spider can run along its own web without getting its feet stuck, right? So to be able to say you're everything that appears is to have the freedom to say, I am the thoughts that appear. I am the body that is here. I am the emotions that arise, because nothing can exist separate to what you are. Everything that exists, there's nothing separate.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can, if you've got the source of all things, the ground of all being through which everything arises, right? Then everything has to be the ground of all being. It can't be separate from it. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like the and I find that a lot of religious stories or mythology sometimes is used to try and capture this picture in a way to communicate across to a mind what's actually being said in a way that can be understood. So from a Hindu perspective, we have the relationship between Shiva and Shakti, right?
Yeah.
And Shiva is one of the great gods of Indian sort of religious history, and Shakti is his partner, his wife, right? So Shiva represents the ground of all being, and Shiva and Shakti represents the appearance of everything, the manifestation, and that Shiva and Shakti are one together. So not only, and the only way to Shiva is via Shakti, the appearance,
or energy or whatever.
Yeah, by the energy. It's the word that they use to describe, the manifestation, if you like, the energetic, vibratory sort of stuff that we see going on around us. That's Shakti. And so where I'm sitting now with this is, I can't honestly say I'm not something. When to say that you're not something is to say that there's something that can possibly be outside of you. But how can there possibly exist anything outside of you?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Nisargadatta said something. He said, we just mentioned it before. He said, before you can say I am, you must be there to say it. So is it like, he used to say, stay in I amness, or that sense of presence. And what I kind of, you try to work it out with the mind, you try to use the words, and then you mentioned the other day, you said it's energy. The words are energy. Yeah. There's the words, when you speak, the energy. I resonated with what you said, because the words I've heard, I couldn't even remember them at the time when they were said by someone who was seen as not two, as you said before, no separation.
Yeah.
It was just energy about the words, and the words were forgotten. This is how important they were. They rose, they disappeared, but there was energy about it. And that energy seems to have, probably was recognized by the energy through here, through this idea, through that which is non-conceptual.
Yeah.
So we try to work it out with the mind, with the words, with the concept, with the knowledge. But actually, it's nothing to do. Most go that way because they try to work it out, and they butcher it. They, the words they try to chop it. But actually, it's nothing to be understood. And if you put that intellect away, and then let it resonate, I don't know. The thing here was that, like, we can really stop. Like, we can't stop thinking, but we can pause it a little. We can stop for a brief second, and if you do it 1 second time, it seems to go just smoothly, because that stillness and the silence you mentioned before, it just, it's rich, and it's very tasty. It's the tastiest meal. And really, why wouldn't you, when you go, oh my God, I just want that again, you just can't get enough of it, and you realize it's not separate from you. So investigation somehow happens by itself, And then, as you said, why wouldn't you drink from your own well? Because you said to me the other night, it's the clearest, it's clear. Clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because, and that's the thing too, is that you are actually self-illuminating.
Yes.
Self-taught, self-guiding. That's what it is.
Yeah. So really, you don't need to go anywhere to get something, or to gain more knowledge, or to learn the new word.
No.
Yeah. So it's basically for someone, someone who believes they're separate. Somehow, I don't know. I think it's a mind trick. It's really such a power.
Well, you got to be. Well, that's something that you see or you don't see. It's where I am now, I didn't even know this existed. So if you don't know something exists, how can you know what you're looking for? You might have a sense of discontentment in you. I never actually experienced what's spoken about with regards to suffering or discontent of things. For me, it was more about I referred to it as, I suppose I was what was called a cause-orientated person, that I had ideals which I adhered to, and those ideals caused me to want to sort of associate and align myself with particular causes, so as those ideals could be expressed. And for that to occur, I had to see the world a particular way. And the only way I could see the world that particular way was to adhere to a certain belief structure or thought processes. But you can only go so far with it. So the best thing, like I met this electrician the other day, and he came to me very excitedly telling me about how he's with a group of people who believe the earth is flat, right? And he was so sincerely sort of hooked into this. and I said to him, I said, that's really good. How about you throw yourself into that 100%? Just totally throw yourself into it. Don't hang back. Go and find the edge and come and get me, and we'll go there together and have a look. Right? And so the way through the illusion for him and for myself was to throw myself wholeheartedly into whatever it was I thought I believed, to see where the path took me, and then to discover that it was basically all smoke and mirrors. It was like the Wizard of Oz, the Wizard in Oz. You pull the curtain aside and there's nothing there. And for him, me just saying to him, go and find the edge, was enough for him to sort of project himself forwards to thinking about finding the edge, looking on a map or something, stepping outside of the belief structure, seeing through the concepts that he was just unquestioningly accepting.
Yes.
And it enabled him to sort of go through that. But that was only because I said to him, go for it. Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah.
And it's the same with anything, you know, like I can recall sort of spending a little bit of time going over it, because I was really, this must have been when a lot of the causes dropped off. I was very interested in, there was all these conspiracy theories floating around the place about all sorts of things. And I was of the mindset of, well, let's find out. Let's follow this through to its conclusion. Let's go and find the tail number on the aeroplane that's dropping those chemicals out of the sky. Find out what the tail number is, what pilot was rostered to fly that airplane, where do they live, and go knock on his door and have a conversation with him about these things that you're hearing being said.
Yes.
And when you follow it through to that process, it's like a fairly logical process. Everything just starts all falling apart, because it's not about actually, conspiracies are never designed to actually lead you anywhere. They're only ever designed to surround you with fog and mist and never able to find the answer type stuff. But if you just ask the right questions on, okay, well, what's the pilot's name? Which airport was it? Let's go. It all just disappears.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, truth is a, it's an interesting thing.
Just go and investigate.
What? Investigate.
Investigate, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Investigate.
When it's sincere investigation, like as Nisargadatta used to say, earnestness.
Absolutely.
That it seems to, just dissolve all the illusion, as if we've been hypnotized, And if there is really openness to see what we truly are, and some of us, as you said before, everything that happened in your life was just perfect. There are no wrong moves. Nothing is in wrong place. So intelligence really takes some of us to have a look, and most of us do. Like people, like all of us, we look for something, and we don't know what we're looking for. Some people think it's in the shopping basket, like shopping basket, with a hole in it.
Yeah.
You can't fill it up, and you try to fill it up, it doesn't happen. It just,
Absolutely.
So.
But how can anything be out of place when there's no difference between right or wrong apart from an attribution?
Yeah.
Like we it's the observer that claims something to be right or wrong.
It has to be a reference point to it has to be from some center who says this is right, this is wrong. What is wrong for someone, it's right for someone. So you have a war, these guys, they like someone is a winner and someone is a loser. So what's really good for these guys might not be good for the ones whose families are killed, whatever. I'm not saying nothing is wrong, like something is wrong, but
is there?
Yeah.
What's wrong?
That's what's right or what's left.
And there's nothing right either.
No left. Nothing right with the left, or left with the right.
Exactly.
Nothing left. Yeah, and that's what you say to your people you work with, to your patients, whatever.
Yes, that's right.
Nothing is wrong.
I work in a setting where I deal with, I suppose, people who are recovering from addictions of various forms, mainly chemical type addictions.
Yeah.
And some of them have, mental health issues as a result. And those mental health issues would be things like, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorders, a whole range of sort of stuff going on for them. And so when they come to the place where I work, I operate from the platform of there's nothing wrong with you, right? And but it's not done in the way of a dismissal, but it's done in the way of the way they receive it is that it's almost like permission to be okay type place. They take it as like a permission to let go of the thoughts that they have about themselves. So I'll say to somebody, well, I'm sitting here, and they might be talking about anxiety or depression or fears of the future or regrets of the past and all that sort of stuff. And then they're down on themselves as being someone who's a waste of space, a waste of oxygen, a total loser. And I'll say to them, well, as far as I'm concerned, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you, and you're completely whole and complete, lacking nothing. And I'll challenge you to go and find something wrong with you and come back to me in 3 days' time or 4 days, however long you want to take, with evidence that you've got something wrong with you. That's not just a thought that you're having that there's something wrong with you. And they'll go away, and with some of them, it will dawn upon them that it's only ever just a thought that they have, that there's something wrong with them. It's not, in actuality, they can't actually prove it beyond holding up in front of me a thought.
I love that. So no thought. So what can tell you is something wrong with you? So the only problem seems to be thought. That you believe your thought. If you go with it, if you believe the thought. But
that thought that they're having actually serves a purpose for them, as far as it's like a vaccination of sorts. Of we get vaccinated against people that might say hurtful things to us. We get exposed to people saying hurtful things to us, so we can learn how to basically become impervious to people saying hurtful things to us, because they're not actually talking to what we are, they're talking to what they see. And it's not actually us, that sort of thing. But an interesting thing I came across the other day was, or not the other day, a few months back, was how the field of psychiatry and psychology was kind of, in the earlier days, aligned with the field of medicine. And the perspective that and the strategy they took to cure the ails of the individual. So the medical model of dealing with a person would be that they would look at a body and say the body was yellow in color. They would then deduce that there might be some liver damage, or there'd be something inside that body that we could get into and cut out, and then the body would heal. So they would go inside and they'd fix up the liver, and then the skin color would turn to normal. So what would appear on the surface was an indication of what was happening within for the body. Like a fever would indicate some presence of a bacterial infection inside, so we'll give it something to fix it, or we might have to a stomach pain on the outside would indicate possibly an appendix damage. We go inside, we cut it out, and then the outside will fix itself when we take care of the inside, right? So that's the medical model. So psychiatry and psychology followed the same path, in that they thought that, back in the day, that if you had a mental health problem, that they thought there was something there called the stone of madness inside the skull. And the reason for these thoughts was because there was a problem in the head. So they would, and they got pictures of this, people are drilling holes in the skull to go looking inside to try and find a pebble or a stone of madness that was resulting in these crazy thoughts occurring, right? And what they're coming to now, the more progressive model of psychology are coming to the understanding now that that's based upon a false premise. The thoughts aren't actually a result of a problem in the head. There's nothing there that you can actually go and dig into and remove this, and all of a sudden all these thoughts, crazy thoughts, are going to disappear. Right? It's actually, there's nothing there at all. All it is are thoughts just appearing. So what they're able to do is put a surface map out, rather than going inside looking for something. So it's no longer this encouragement to dig into your past to try and find out the problem for today. So they go digging into the. Where
is the past? Where is past? Can you live 5 minutes ago? Can you relive 5 minutes ago? Can you go back to it now?
Exactly. So you go digging for this, and then this will fix here, and it's not connected.
Yeah.
And the more progressive models of psychology and psychiatry are kind of coming to that sort of understanding now, where it's not like medicine. You can't go digging for something to find a cure. Yeah. It's more present than that. It's more immediate than that.
Yes.
So I come up from the perspective of, you've got nothing wrong with you. No matter how much you go digging, looking for something wrong with you, you won't find anything wrong with you. All you'll find is an appearance of thoughts happening for you, communicating to you that there's something wrong with you. Yeah. And what's more is that you're the one who sees the thoughts, right? You see the thoughts arising and coming and going, but at no time in your life have any of those thoughts ever seen you looking at them. Yes. The thought isn't actually aware of you looking at it. Yes. The thought has never said to you, oh, hey, hey, Jonathan, I notice you're looking at me all the time. A thought doesn't actually say that, right? A thought can't see you, right? This is what I say to my clients. A thought can't see you. And they said, yeah, that's right. A thought can't see me. I see the thought. Well, if a thought can't see you, how can it have anything to say about you? Yeah. A thought cannot communicate anything to you if it can't see you.
And what can see the thought? What can see the thought?
That's right. They see the thoughts, but the thoughts don't see them. Yeah. It's who's aware of who. The thought isn't aware of them. They're aware of the thought. So if the thought's not aware of them, then how can that thought have anything to say about them? Yeah. It can't. No. And that for some of them is extremely liberating. Yeah. Because then they realize that, gee, I'm listening to something. It's like walking down a crowded mall in Melbourne, bumping into a stranger that you've never met before, who tells you your entire life story as though it's the truth. Yeah. And then you just believing it all because they're saying it to you. But you know that person has never met me, so how can I ever possibly talk about me?
But some people do believe it. They just believe anything they hear. They just, they go to these, what they call them, to predict their future and to tell them their past, and they believe what they tell them, psychics or whatever, and it's the same as watching the news. 99.99% of people, they believe, they get hypnotized, and this is where we are. This is, we all get hypnotized by the parents, by the society, by the news, by politicians. They say it 1 second, you might suspect it. The third, fourth, fifth time, you'll start believing it. Seriously, even if you see through illusion, you see, I'm not this. This is not who I am. I am prior to my thought. Prior to the thought, I am. And then someone comes into your life who could, and if they keep repeating something, you'll start trusting them. If there's a trust there. Again, I'll call it brainwashing. That you start believing in it, and then your belief is a problem. And someone split it up, lie. There's a lie in belief. So that's a lie. Belief is something that you cannot prove, something without evidence. You take something to be true without evidence. That's belief. So problem is belief. No belief, no problem. No mind, no problem. Where is belief? In the mind. Just drop it. You are not the mind. What you are, and you said before, what does thought know about you? And what you are is not a thought. What you are, what's seeing? There's nothing here that sees. Seeing is before I claim I see. Seeing is, knowing is, seeing is. Yeah. And it's not either, So it's very, and when you find there's nothing here to hold the thought, there's nothing separate. Thought arises. Everything appears. The thought appears. Emotion appears. The pain appears, seemingly.
Where do you think the thought comes from?
Yeah, well, exactly. Where does it come from? Where does it come from?
You.
Yeah, it appears as everything else. From the silence, from the stillness, from the, ultimate, whatever call it, concept.
Yeah.
Where is the unborn, Nisargadatta, or whatever, what's his name, Banke, the the monk, whatever that monk, he used to call it unborn Buddha mind. Just stay there. Where is a problem? In unborn, on Nisargadatta used to say, did you have any problems in your mother's belly? Did you need to resolve anything? Was there anything wrong with you before your birth? When you were unborn, where is a problem? But as Nisargadatta says, also stay in that sense of presence, awareness. And then whenever the thought seems disturbing, it's like energy arising. Could be a bit of a tsunami, winds and rain, the nature, but nature doesn't have reference point. So it's same with the thought, same with the wind. Wind arises, doesn't say, nothing claims the wind. Nature doesn't claim.
One thing I find really interesting in this journey, so-called, that we all engage in, is that on one level you can speak what you think is the truth, and then further down the road on the journey, you come to see that everything that you thought was a truth was completely false, but that it was a falsity that served a purpose at the time. And it was a falsity that was being held by you to be true, and because it was held by you to be true, it was something you could use to go in a particular direction. It's much like we create stories of deities which perform particular functions. Then we identify with those deities, and in that very identification, we're able to use it as a hook to sort of reconnect with ourselves, although we've never been separate, right? So the notion of a thought possibly existing outside of your capacity to create it is okay to say at a certain level, right? Of how a thought can just appear. And it's while you think things are happening out of your control, you sort of say, I'm not that, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, because it's also a way of sort of withdrawing from, or coming closer to the truth that it's not out of your control. As we all experience synchronicities in life, and things coming together. But who's doing that? It's us. It's you. It's you as everything that is. So when a thought appears, it's only ever arisen out of you. And it's what we do with that thought when it appears as to whether or not we're going to learn from ourselves or not, being self-taught like we are. So if you've got a Shiva and a Shakti sort of scenario happening, you've got the formlessness with the form happening, and out of the form, a thought arises, which is a form. It's a subtle form which has appeared out of form. What am I teaching myself with the appearance of this? What can I learn from this? Am I going to run from this, or am I going to sort of embrace it and take what I have to get from it and to learn from it? Because there's nothing that appears that is not from you, for you, by you. There's absolutely nothing that's not of you, immersed in you, is you. The thoughts, even the appearances of what we see as people caught up in a delusion. That's also just you holding on to an identification that there are people caught up in a delusion, and that somehow these people are, engaging in a belief or lying about something and all the rest of it. And every time we tell ourselves that story, we're reinforcing that. Now, on a particular level, that's a truth. There are, and people will hear what they need to hear at the level they're going to be hearing at. And at a certain level, there are people who are engaging in beliefs and who are, reinforcing a lie, reinforcing the illusion, all that sort of stuff. But that is only a truth at that level of reality. At the ultimate level, from the absolute perspective, that's just a movement of the divine. It's the movement of you, who's appearing as that and is reinforcing that story by engaging in that conversation about that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's the sort of thing, like, sometimes I'll chuckle as I walk down the road because there's a cow eating grass behind a tree. And I just look at that and I just get struck by what that feels like for that cow to sit there eating grass behind that tree, or for a bird that's trying to fly into a strong gust of wind and then getting knocked back by the force of the wind hitting it. So you get caught up with different expressions of consciousness around the place. Like at the moment, where I work, we've got this, like that photo I put of that tree that the branch fell down.
Yes, I saw that.
I'm struck by the aliveness of the trees around, because they got these roots that go under the ground. And they attack the toilets of the houses because they're looking for water to drink. So these living, conscious, aware expressions of yourself as a tree is basically going underneath the house to drink the water out of the toilet that humans are using.
Yes.
And we get so separate from what we're surrounded by that we think we're living on this planet as the only ones here who are aware or conscious of what's going on. When
that's great.
Amazing movements and expressions of the one consciousness around the place, seeing it all happen. And as you dive into yourself, as you fall back into yourself, and release and relinquish the identification of individuated sort of perspective, it opens you up to a more universal perspective of which everything is an expression of you. So you kind of get to feel the force of wind pressure under the wing of a bird as it's hovering above you. Or you get to sort of feel the feel of grass under a magpie as it's walking along the grass, or having some sort of weird shared relationship with a worm as it's pulling the worm out of the ground to eat it. It's just this interaction that's going on of alive presence everywhere. And that stuff is so much more real and so much more experiential than any story.
And see, we talk about this and seriously, like, we use concepts and talk and really we know nothing. And sometimes I feel like, Jesus, all these words, for nothing. And
all these risks.
Okay. Thank you so much for this, and
I appreciate this. It'd be good to see how it turns out.
Thank you.